we understand this idea of being a cost center and the importance of being able to show cost out and sort of defer some of that out to revenue aligned organizations or other organizations, period, because it stops a lot of that internal focus, or at least helps redirect a lot of that internal focus on cost cutting at a cost center, an IT department, and shifts the conversation to how are our technology costs aligned to our revenue, right? Because we, from a cloud cost management perspective, and really cost allocation and chargeback are a cost management discussion, to be clear. So this is one of the things you got to get right before you really focus on a lot of optimization. So the importance,
how do you know what to cut if you don't know where things are?
Exactly. Or should you cut it, right? Because if you can align costs out to your highest revenue growth item and those costs are skyrocketing, that may not be the thing I want to cut. It may be the thing I just want to manage, because depending on whether that's growing linearly or whether it's growing asymptotically, or hopefully not growing exponentially, because then you do have something to go fix. But the idea being that I don't want to just kind of blanket across the board start cutting things with a cleaver. I want to use a scalpel, and I need to first understand what I'm not going to touch or what I'm just going to focus on managing. I think that's really important.
There is a process that can run for longer than serverless's timeout values, right? Because there's a limit to how long you can run a Lambda function, because it's only meant for things that are less than 15 minutes in time frame. It's not meant to be running 24 hours a day. It would cost way too much. In fact, if it's going to run 24 hours a day, it should be on a server, right? I mean, like at the end of the day, so or a container, right? But what we decided was to take this process that can last longer than, say, 15 minutes in this particular example. We looked at, from an architectural standpoint, breaking that process up into a bunch of smaller chunks, which we could have done with Lambda. But that looked like it was making the problem we currently had a little bit more complicated than the solution to that problem didn't seem like it was less complicated than the problems, that solution than the problem we currently had. And so, it became that particular function just became it became more suitable for containers, because we didn't want to have to go rewrite this process to chunk things out in, say, 10-minute increments, or however we would have done that from a development perspective.
What we also have to understand is the economic drivers and pressures on costs of running and managing a data center or a footprint in a data center. Power costs, energy costs are up right now. I saw one quote from another article, in which, again, we'll link this in the show notes, CNBC, of organizations seeing 65% increase in energy costs, and that's their motivator for moving to cloud, because cloud costs are much more stable than these inflationary costs
due to competition
of the data center. Yep. That's right. Again, due to competition, because there is no competition in the utility space, right?
At the end of the day, saving money is always good, but if you go by the suggestions being made by the providers, you're most likely saving the amount of money that they want you to save, and not the amount that you can actually save. And that's because, one, it's really confusing. all of them in general. Why should I have this one versus this one? Which workload should I have this? So when you start to look at the decision tree for just whether you should use reserved instances versus savings plans, I mean, there's a handful of decisions that make it really easy. Like, if you're only using Lambda and Fargate, right, then I should be on a compute savings plan. Very easy. But 65 or 70% of AWS's revenue comes from EC2. So that's where you can save a majority of your money. And, once you get into trying to figure out what's best for these types of workloads and ones that work on these days, there's just a litany of different decisions that you have to make. And so savings plans, when they came in, they were pretty successful, because it made you commit based on spend. You don't have to worry about usage. There's just less decisions that you need to make, but you're better bang for your buck is to, one, have a strategy for both, right? Depending on the workloads that you have, commit and usage-based spend. And there's so much context that's missing from the recommendations that the providers give you, right? I mean, they only give you simple calculations and look back periods to say, okay, and things like if I had, if I do the look back period at 60 days versus 7 days, and let's say I shut down half of my EC2 instances 30 days ago, it's still going to recommend a bunch of compute from 60 days ago that I no longer have. But again, that's not the tool. It's meant to give you an estimation, and it's meant to give you basically the lowest risk recommendations that AWS will give you, and you can just achieve far greater savings by, one, adding context to an algorithm, but two, just recognizing that it takes too much time to gain this expertise when your time at your organization is far better spent servicing your customer.
Sometimes it's not about cutting costs. Sometimes it's about understanding costs. And so if one of those 7 revenue units, or if that one that's using 90% of the infrastructure is growing at 10 times a year or something outrageous, they should not be worried about cloud spending. Someone else needs to worry about that while they continue to go grab that revenue and accelerate that growth and do something outstanding. But that's the thing you have to get your arms around, is getting visibility into that of, oh, wait, I can tie all of this cloud spending to the thing that's outrageously successful. That's an entirely different conversation. It's entirely different organizational change than, oh my gosh, we have all these pressures that we need to get this under control because of global economic pressures and business pressures and not wanting to, lay off key staff, et cetera. Those are two different things. Get visibility first in order to figure that part out.